All right, everybody. Welcome to the Inside Out Alignment Show, episode number 7. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Lanny Bassham. Lanny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Mike. How are you?
I'm really, really good. So I'll give you a quick introduction. Lanny is an Olympic gold medalist, third most medals in shooting history, and he works to turn competitors into champions since 1977. He developed the mental management system and is the author of numerous books, of which my favorite is With Winning in Mind. So, Lanny, thanks for taking the time again to talk today.
I appreciate it.
And before we get started, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends. So let's get started. So, Lanny, I wanted to start on the concept of peak performance. And peak performance, I've heard you say, is 90% mental. Can you elaborate a little bit on really performance being that high of a percent mental?
If you talk to anybody at the top of their game, any sport, I mean, I work with a lot of PGA Tour players, Olympic athletes, people at the absolute top of their game. And if you ask them what percentage of your sport is mental, you get a big number back. And the number I get most often is 90%.
Now, you've refined what's called and created the mental management system. So can you give us a 30,000 foot view on what it is and how it works in sports?
Well, here's what most people do. Most people learn how to compete in any sport. Learn how to do it by working on form at the expense of the mental game. So they'll go, because there are tons of form teachers. I mean, every high school has a football coach, a basketball coach, a golf coach, or whatever it is, and 90% of those guys are working teaching form, but they're not teaching what you're supposed to think about while you do it. And so that part kind of gets skipped. And even people that are working on their own tend to, if you buy all the books. At one time in my life, I had 1,000 self-help books in my library, and I would say that of those books, that there was almost none of those books really talked about an organized way to think so that you would have a mental consistency. Well, my story really is that I focused on form, and form does work for a while. It got me to the top 4 on the U.S. shooting team, and it got me to the Olympics. But I hadn't won anything in 3 years. I hadn't won anything. My teammates always beat me, and I didn't know that there was a missing part of this deal. And back in those days, we thought that mental toughness, which is what we called it, I'm talking about way back in the 1970s and 80s, that mental toughness was something you had. It wasn't something you could learn. And so we weren't trying to learn it. And so I make an Olympic team in 1972. I go in there and just couldn't handle the pressure. And I ended up with the silver medal. My teammate won the gold medal, but I came away determined to find out what the winners were doing about the mental game. And I kind of knew what the rifle shooters were doing because my teammates were the best in the world. But I spent a couple of years interviewing Olympic gold medalists, and I've never stopped interviewing top people about what they're doing. And I created a system on how to think, used that system to win the world championships in my sport, win the Olympics the next time out, and I've been teaching that system, ever since. So what it looks like is that it's an organized way to master what you're thinking about. First of all, to determine what's the optimum thing to think about before, during, and after a task. And if your task is hitting a golf ball, okay, what is the optimum thing for you to be thinking about while you execute your routine? Now, I'll leave it up to the technical coaches to teach you how to swing a golf club and how to putt and chip. But they typically don't tell you how to think when you do it. And that's really what my job is and what the system is designed to do. is designed to teach you exactly what you're supposed to think about when you do it.
Yeah, what's really interesting, I've heard you say it's because in golf, in professional golf, we hear sports psychologists over and over. And you've said pretty clearly, what I teach isn't psychology, it's a mental program.
Sports psychology is based on psychology. The sports psychologists are trained uh, at the sports psychology degrees are trained by professors at universities. That's where their information comes from, a psychology basis. Okay. Mine doesn't. My business, which I've been at it for over 40 years, is not based on psychology at all. It's based on what the winners are thinking, what the winners are doing. And that's really what the winners are using. So it's 100% competitor based. So basically, instead of going to school and get a PhD in sports psychology and try to teach somebody how to win, I go to the winners and find out what they're doing about
Yeah.
it. How are they winning? What are they thinking about right before they perform? What are they thinking about after they perform? What works for those guys? And that's what I teach, and that's what got me to my gold medal. And okay, I'm full time learning everything I can, and I pass that on to my clients.
I love that when you started this, you literally said, I'm just going to go ask these Olympic gold medalists what they did. And they were willing to have that conversation with you. I thought that was just the beginning of what was to create so much good in terms of what you've done. That was just, I thought it was great. I love to hear that that's what you did and continue to do, is to continue to ask those that have succeeded, what is it that actually works? Because we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we do need to have a process and a system that people can replicate.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way, that we tend to have an unlimited, almost unlimited amount of people willing to teach you what's physically to do in sport, but very few people that teach you what you're supposed to think about. We leave that up to you. Well, I will tell you for sure that most people don't know what to think. They are really clueless, and given to their own devices, they will come up with more harmful thoughts than helpful ones. So, but when they're told, if you would just do this and think this way, uh, we can eliminate about 75% of the baggage that's causing you to lose points and things like that away from you. We could take that off, and performances improves, and you'll enjoy the sport more, and you'll be a lot more consistent. How important is consistency in sport? I mean, it's everything in most sports, is to find something that works and do it all the time. Well, why don't you have a consistent way to think? And that promotes technical consistency, and that promotes higher scores. So it's very logical. When I sit down and talk to people, they say, yeah, why isn't somebody teaching me that? Well, somebody is.
Yeah. His name's Lanny
So,
Bassham.
but
Yeah.
it's not normally done in school. I mean, did you take a course in high school or college on how to think?
No, it's always technical,
I
technical
didn't
anything.
either. I didn't either. I mean, and most coaches, uh, they it's by the way, it's just a lot easier to teach form than it is to teach the mental game, because you can demonstrate form. You can say, hey, watch that champion, see how he's doing what he's doing, see how he's holding the club, see how he's swinging the club, well, swing it like that. Well, try this. See that champion, see how he's thinking, think like that.
Yeah, I
You know,
think what you do is, I would say, you make the invisible visible, because you can see a swing. It's pretty obvious, right? But you
but
can't see what's going on between the ears, which kind of leads me to my next question. So, and you kind of referenced this in your book and in some other interviews about Ben Crane and making process primary versus being outcome focused. And I will just say, observationally, when I focus putting on process, when I really intentionally focus on process, I cannot tell you how much better I putt. I cannot believe how many putts I make when I forget about the hole, but I'm thinking about all the controllables and I let it go. And it's like that happened to go in. I wonder why. But talk a little bit about making process primary and focusing less on outcome.
Well, here's the problem with outcome. Outcome is a variable. It's never going to be a constant. Okay, so if you are thinking about score, like, okay, what's my score so far? What's it likely to be in the future? And you alter what you think about on this shot based on what happened. Like, oh, I really need to get this one. I've got two bogeys in a row. I need to birdie this hole. I need to really make this putt. This is or what really happens to even tour players is when you get within 10 feet of the hole, you make an assumption that this is a birdie opportunity. I've got to make this one because anything that's close, I've got to make it. So what is it? What do you do when you got to make it? You be extra careful. Well, extra careful is called over trying.
Yeah.
And what we found out is that over trying is not a good thing to do. You were making putts when you were just trusting that you could make this. You were trusting your subconscious skill to make it. When you were thinking about process and not about outcome, you can make them in training, but you go to a tournament and you're careful now, and you miss. And so that's called overtrying. And overtrying is a function of thinking about score instead of just thinking about process. Well, here's the interesting thing about process. You can quantify what you're supposed to think about in your routine. You can determine the optimum thing to think about and then just think about that and let the skill drive what happens to the ball. Well, you trust your skill, you run your mental process. The mental process can be a constant. So in a sport like golf, just talking about golf for a minute, golf is a sport of variables. I mean, there are more variables on a player than on any sport that I coach. I mean, everything's a variable in golf. Anything you can make a constant in golf is a huge advantage. Actually, anything you can make a constant in any sport is a huge advantage. If it was a variable before and you can make it a constant now, that's a big deal, no matter what your sport is.
Right.
But what you're looking for is a consistent mental process. Well, first thing you have to do is define it. Well, what should I be thinking about? What are the essential elements that really matter? And you want to eliminate the ones that don't matter. Because what I see in a lot of my clients when they first come to me is they're thinking all about a lot of things that really shouldn't be in there.
Right.
They get in their own way. And we help them clean up that mental program, and we give them something that all of the essential elements are in there, and they just go out happy because now I know exactly what to think about. When I do this physically, I think this, and mental consistency is assured.
So you talk about trying too hard. Would you say the genesis for this was when you got your silver medal? I thought I remember reading in the book, you felt like in that silver medal, you were trying too hard. And then that was the epiphany when it's like, oh, if I, that's an area I need to focus on. I don't need to try too hard. I need to try the right amount. We talk about careful, careless, and carefree. Can you talk a little bit about that?
If you talk about mental effort, the amount of mental effort you give something, everybody wants to do well, especially, I went in the Olympics 1972, and obviously I hadn't won anything of significance in 3 years. I didn't win the Olympic tryout. My teammate was first, I was second, and I just beat everybody else that wasn't winning at that time. And so I go in the Olympics, and I don't know anything about mental training. I don't know anything about mental management. I hadn't studied any of this stuff. So I got there just on my skill alone. And I uh, I was thinking right before we started to shoot, I was thinking, well, I've got to win this gold medal, and if I win the gold medal, nobody will care that I haven't won anything in the previous 3 years, on the U.S. team. Because this is a ticket that when you punch this ticket, you're kind of there's no bigger ticket to punch.
Yeah.
And I thought this is a great opportunity for me to be redeemed. My whole career will be redeemed. And so I was thinking about that. If that's not thinking about outcome, I don't know what is. And I was thinking about, well, I got to beat Jack Ryder as another outcome thing. I got to shoot a good score. I got to get a 10 on my first shot. And I go into the Olympics, and they start the thing, and my heart rate jumps up. And that's a bad thing for a rifle shooter because we have to shoot between pulse beats
Yeah.
in rifle shooting. Because if you shoot when the pulse beats, so you get a 9 because the target's so small that we can make the body stop to a certain extent. But when the heart continues to beat, and when it beats, it kicks you out of the 10 ring. So you have to shoot in between pulse beats. It's a big advantage if your pulse is slow. But I got in the Olympics, and my pulse rate was double what I was used to seeing,
Right.
and I didn't have a way to deal with that. And so it actually, when I shot a couple of bad shots, it got worse. And so now I'm out of control, and I have no real mental skills to defeat this. And so I end up dropping a lot of points that I shouldn't have dropped. And then when I've lost so many points that I'm thinking I can't possibly medal, pressure's off, and I shoot fine. I shoot good the rest of the time. I kind of enjoyed the last 2/3 of the term. But and those scores ended up giving me a silver medal. But my teammate won the gold medal, and he didn't choke. I thought he might choke because there's a lot of pressure on him. But I learned. I spent the next 2 years interviewing Olympic gold medalists on the phone. Back in those days, we didn't have cell phones. We had answering machines. And so you would leave a message on an answering machine, you call back. And so I would leave this message, I'm Lanny Bassham. You don't know me. I want a silver medal in the Olympics, and I need your help. Would you please call me back? And that's what I did. And they all did.
That is so awesome.
Because I was one of them. I'd been to the Olympics. I understood pressure. I understood what they were doing, and they called me back, and they were wonderful. They would answer my questions. I wasn't competing against them, and so they would share. I got information that I don't think a journalist writing a book could have gotten,
No.
or a media guy, or even or even a sports psychologist couldn't have gotten the information that I got because we were talking on a level that you had to be there to really understand what Olympic pressure is all about.
Right.
They had been there, and I wanted to know, why did you win? I didn't win. We're both skilled, and so nobody had the whole story, but everybody had a piece. And when I talked to enough people, I saw there's a pattern to this, and I developed my first system and used it to win the World Championships in 1974, and then 2 years later win the Olympics, and then I'm off and running, and I'm winning a lot after that. Won the World Championships again, and so I had a really good career, and kind of got up to where I'm third total medal count for my sport. But there are a lot of people out there that are like me, that they're not winning because they don't have a mental game that wins. And they're not going to be taught that in school. They're not going to be taught that by their technical coaches. They need to have the best mental system, and the people that are looking for that kind of thing, that's who comes to us. I think a good first step is to get With Winning in Mind. Read that. It's a good introduction to the system, and then and then give me a call or send me an email at lanny@mentalmanagement.com, and we will tell you what your options are, and either working professionally with me or maybe taking advantage of online courses or other things that we have that might fit their time commitment and budget, and we can help them. That's what we do.
That's great. So you also talk a lot about conscious, subconscious, and then your pillar, the self-image, and why self-image is so important. So can you briefly touch on self-image and why it's so important in performance?
Well, I think a lot of the books that I had in my library, that all of them are that we're talking about the mental game. They Most of them, a vast majority of them, were talking about what I'm calling conscious, what you think about, your thoughts, and subconscious, your skills. They were thinking about, like, there's some great books out there, like Tim Galway's Inner Game of Tennis. He talks about self one, self two. Some of them talk about the teller, the doer, things like that. So the indication is that the performance is a function of, you got to think good things and you got to do good things, and that's it, and well, that's a problem with that. Is that if it's a two item function, then you explain this. If you and I have equal skills and equal mental game, 100% equal, but we're in a playoff together for a championship, and you think you can beat me, and I think you can beat me, it's over for me. What's that?
Yeah, that's self-image.
That's self-image.
Yeah.
That's self-image. That's your opinion of whether, can I make this shot, or can I make this shot? Am I better than this guy? How do I fit in the world? And self-image is the missing element. And I didn't even know what to call it until I read a book by Maxwell Maltz, and published in 1960, called Psycho-Cybernetics, and
Awesome
Maxwell
book.
Maltz nailed it. And he said that your what you think you can do matters, and it folds into the self-help guys that talk about, I mean, like the famous Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Well, that's not skill, and that's not thinking. That's got to be something else. Well, that's self-image. So I started to really look at this, and I found out some interesting things, that the self-image that you have currently happened because of a thing I'm going to call imprinting. So every time you hit a good shot, what imprints in your self-image is it's like me to hit a good shot. Every time I miss a shot, it's like me it imprints in my self-image. It's like me to miss a shot. Okay, but that's not the only way that your self-image is imprinted. Every time you think about missing, you have an imprint in your self-image. It's like you to miss it. And so your self-image is growing and shrinking all the time by what you're thinking about. If you're thinking about doing something well, your self-image grows. If you're thinking about having a problem with it, your self-image shrinks. And not only that, have you ever gone to a golf course and ask a player, how did you do? What do they do? What do they talk about first when you ask them that? They talk about what the shots they did good, or the shots they did poor.
4 shots.
Poor shots. I mean, it's every sport that I've ever coached. They say the same thing. I guarantee you, rifle shooters talk about their misses more than their hits. Okay, so you have to think every time you think about, talk about, or write about what you do. Most people don't keep a performance journal. We recommend that. But if every time you think about, talk about, write about something happening, or around people that think about it or talk about it, your self-image is going in the direction of the conversation, of the picture in your brain. Okay, so it's not the difference between the top 5% that do 95% of winning one of the major difference between the top 5%ers and the people in the middle of the leaderboard is the way they think and the way they talk and what they do. And that's all about building and protecting self-image. It's a critical part of training that is almost overlooked
Yeah,
by
so
everyone.
sorry, Lenny, and you also, and I think it's pretty common, but I'm the type of person who, so word choices matter, the way you talk, right? I'm the type of person who fill in the blank, and that can be growing the self-image or it can be shrinking the self-image. I'm the type of person who recovers quickly after a bad shot. I'm the type of person who is likely to stripe it down the right side of the fairway. It's that constant imprinting. I love the word when you said imprint. It's because it's kind of like parenting, right? 20 attaboys to get rid of one criticism, right? So you can, I think, don't you think you can shrink the self-image quicker than you can build it?
Well, just think about it this way, that every time you think about a problem, your self-image shrinks. Every time you think about the solution to the problem, your self-image grows.
Yeah.
Every time you think about doing it right, your self-image grows. You improve the probability it's likely to do it well. But every time you think about the problem, self-image shrinks. So you just have to be a problem-based a solution-based person instead of a problem-based person. I mean, this makes total sense when people think about it, when they understand, oh yeah, negative Nelly over there, she's not going to get any better thinking like that. Well, that's true. Why do you do it?
Right, right. Hey, Lanny, I want to transition real quick, and then I've got one final question. But so a lot of my clients are folks trying to reduce their weight, trying to get to a weight number. Some of them are extremely obese and choose to go the bariatric route. So as you think about the mental management system and you think about weight reduction, are there any kind of high level things to consider?
Well, one of the things I talk about in my book is that you need to change your self-image. Like my mother, she wasn't really an obese woman, but she was very, very focused on her figure and so forth, and her health. And she lost 1,000 pounds, 10 pounds at a time.
Yeah.
And one of the ways she did it is that her goal was to lose 10 pounds. That's a bad goal. Because what are you thinking about when you say to yourself, I want to lose 10 pounds? You're thinking about the weight. Okay. You're not thinking this way. I would rather set a goal. I want to weigh this weight. Because let's say you're thinking about losing 10 pounds. Okay. Well, let's say you lose 10 pounds. Okay, you've achieved your goal. Now your self-image says, wait a minute, I'm trying to lose 10 pounds. One way to lose 10 pounds is gain it back and I can lose it again. Gain it back and I can lose it again. And my mother was caught in that cycle. She didn't become a person that weighed a certain weight. She became somebody that was constantly fighting her weight loss. And so I think you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Do you want to be a person that eats this, or do you want to be like me to eat this, or like me to go to exercise this way, or like me to do this stuff? The self-image has to change, and we believe that when the self-image changes, the behavior is permanent. But when you try to consciously change the behavior, without changing the self-image, it's temporary, and you switch back to your old habits. You have to be ready to do it, and use all the tools that are available to you. Peer pressure, other people, accountability, the methods that work for other people are going to work for you too. And so it's no real difference in everything else that we do. You just have to, first of all, make up your mind that you got to be willing to change. Now, one of the things that might help you in my book, that it's not really a weight loss book, but when you get back to the back of the book, when it's talked about a directive affirmation, I can tell you how to change your self-image. And the directive affirmation is a great way to change self-image. And we've had a number of people that have weighed a certain amount by using, become like them to be that weight. And that has helped them when other things were standing in the way. So
Yeah, and I think in the back of the book, you too also have a section on goal setting and how to write goals the right way to increase the likelihood of achieving said goal.
right.
Got it. All right, Lenny. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us. I'm really grateful that you took the time to talk to us today. If people need to reach you, connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to do that, you can go to our website, mentalmanagement.com, and there's a lot of good stuff there. You can contact me directly at lanny@mentalmanagement.com.
That's great. And I'll make sure I put links in the post here and so everyone can make it real easy to get there. So Lanny, again, thanks so much for the time. It was absolutely a pleasure. And I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, thanks a lot, and God bless you, Mike.
Thanks, Lanny.